All right. So yesterday I have spoken to you about the transport layer. Let's continue talking about the transport layer with a few more details. Yesterday it was a very unstructured class. I thought I'll use my presentation to talk to you. So moving on, when you talk about the transport layer service, it might be the repetition of what I have spoken to yesterday. So I'll go a little quicker. At the end of the session, we have some assignments or probably a work with related to IP addressing. We'll work on that. Right. So as I have said yesterday, you have got all your end devices here, where it has got all the 5 layers of TCP/IP model or Internet Protocol stack, and here as well. But if you look at the middle devices, the routers and the switches, they don't have the transport layer or application layer. This is the reason the transport layer protocol goes for the logical communication between application processes running on different hosts. In other words, it is between end to end, process to process communication. That is a speciality of transport layer. Moving on, there are some points about transport layer. The transport layer protocols are implemented in the end system, but not in the network routers. I have explained that in detail. Transport layer converts the application layer messages into transport layer segments. This is little crucial, as I mentioned. There is something called maximum segment size related to the network layer. Based on the protocol and the size, network layer uh, protocol can transfer from one machine to another machine. The transport layer converts the application layer PDU into smaller segments. Okay, we call it as transport layer segments. Interestingly, every of the transport layer segment will have its own header. If you use the transmission control protocol, it uses TCP header, otherwise it uses the UDP header. So every segment has the TCP or UDP header attached to it. Then network routers do not examine the fields of the transport layer segment encapsulated. Transport layer header, for instance, TCP has its own header. Today we will talk about UDP header. So routers will not examine it. In other words, routers are not going to access the port numbers. The source port or destination ports are not known to the router. This is the reason I have mentioned a statement that the routers are not aware that there is a end-to-end connection is established and they are communicating, because they are totally unaware. All they know is there is a packet from this IP to this IP. That's all the network layer is going to be aware with respect to the transport layer information. Right. On the receiving side, once the sender has sent the packet, the receiver side transport layer processes the received segment and it makes the data available to the application layer. In other words, on the sender side, the data comes from the application layer to the transport layer, and then transport layer takes the packet to the network layer. This is on the sender side. On the receiver side, this is in a reverse order. Network layer pushes the data to the transport layer. There, it does all required on the reassembly or examining the packet header, which port number it is, it has to be attached. All these calculations are done, and then it is given to the application layer. Right. So what's the relation between the transport layer and the network layer? If you could recall, the transport layer is serviced by the network layer. The reason is network layer is available just below to the transport layer. Network layer is a connectionless layer because IP is the predominant protocol, whereas transport layer uses connection oriented as well as connectionless. So on a specific case, transmission control protocol is implemented on IP. Otherwise, it is said that connection oriented protocol is installed or is running or developed over the connection less protocol. So that is the crucial portion here. And again, network layer takes the responsibility of using the IP address or identifying the hosts for communication, whereas transport layer takes the responsibility of identifying the specific process at these hosts. All right. So this I have mentioned to yesterday, just to completion sake. When you look at the TCP, when the sender is thinking that are you getting everything whatever I have sent, the other side feels no, please slow down, I don't get whatever you have sent. But on the other side, if you look at the UDP, the sender is just thinking whether the person is able to receive whatever I have sent. But the other side of the machine does not bother about it. Okay, it says, "Who cares? You just send it. I'll take care." Right. So that's the reason UDP is much faster than TCP because no strings attached to UDP. Right. This is an interesting one. You can compare and contrast TCP with UDP. On the left hand side, I have given all the characteristics or properties of TCP. On the right hand side, I have given the properties of UDP. Right. So TCP is a connection oriented, whereas UDP is connectionless. It is reliable and reliable. It gives in order delivery. Now, this is not in order delivery, it is out of order delivery. Okay, that's my mistake. So out of order delivery, right? And TCP has got congestion control. There is no congestion control. Flow control, no flow control. Segmentation reassembly, nothing. Error control, no, it's not going to bother. Retransmission, no retransmission. Sequence number, no sequence number, right? So these are the points I would recommend you to remember when you talk about the TCP, especially when you try to compare the TCP with UDP. Moving on. Let's talk about multiplexing and demultiplexing. This also I mentioned yesterday using socket. Yes, delivering the data in a transport layer segment to the correct socket is called demultiplexing. This you have to think on the receiver side. The receiver side takes the information or takes the data from the network layer, processes it, and it has to deliver the data to the correct application layer protocol. On the other day, we saw a particular server was running two applications. One was the web application, the other one was the um, telnet application, where when the packets are sent from two different stations to that machine, now it is the transport layer checking the header of the transport layer packet and then sends the data to the appropriate application. That is called demultiplexing. What could be the multiplexing? Exactly the reverse way. Okay, from the application layer you get all the data, then put them together along with the header information and send the data to the network layer. This is called multiplexing. The other way is called the demultiplexing. Right. So this diagram depicts and helps us to understand the multiplexing and demultiplexing probably in a clear way. You have got three stations. Okay, station one are probably PC1, PC2, and PC3. They have their own protocol stack within it, and PC2 has got two applications running. Now PC1 has got a socket or a process called P3, which has got its connection with P1 in the PC2. Similarly, P4 is the application number of PC3, which has got a connection with process 2 in the machine 2, PC2. Right? This is what exactly happening. Now, you look at the transport layer here. This transport layer receives two different segments, right? One is from PC1, the other one is from PC2. Both are landing at transport layer. Now, demultiplexing is clearly explained here. The transport layer takes the packet, opens the header, finds out the destination port number, and sends the packet to the appropriate port. So please remember it, the difference between multiplexing and demultiplexing. Let's move on to the port number. Again, a repetition. So port numbers are of 16 bits in size, and because it has got 16 bits in size, it is ranging from 0 to 65,535, and 0 to 1023 are called as well-known ports, and the rest few of them are called registered ports, and the remaining are called dynamic ports. I have given few examples of well-known ports which is known to you. Now look at the left hand side, you've got a header structure, right? So this is a sample or a template header structure of transport layer. This is not specific to any protocol. Okay, don't be confused. This is a simple template. It tries to convey that a header structure or a header of transport layer must have two ports, two things. One is the source port, the other one is destination port. Whether it is TCP header or UDP header, you must have the source port and destination port. All right. So it is similar to from address and to address. So a packet must contain who is the application which is initiating this packet, and to which application the packet has to land. All right. So this is called source port and destination port. And of course, the other header fields. These other header fields will vary for TCP protocol as well as UDP protocol, as we are going to see shortly, right? And port numbers, this I wanted to quickly skip it because we have looked at this yesterday, how those source and destination ports are exchanged. Anyway, for a quick look, you have got a host here, developed or implemented all the layers of OSI reference model. You got the server B. So host is communicating with server. Now a packet is sent from the client process. Okay, it uses the socket to send it. This is the onward journey. In the onward journey, source port is 19157. The destination port is 46428. Now the server has to respond. When it is responding, you can see the source and destination ports are exchanged. So this is the reason why a UDP or TCP header must carry the source port as well as destination port in its header, because the source address and the destination addresses have to be swapped for the reverse communication, right? Okay. Moving on, when you have more than one sockets implemented, you could see from the web client there are two packets which are initiated. Okay, one is having port number 26145, the other one is having port number 7532, right? And these two different packets are initiated by two different processes at the web client. Look at the destination port number. Destination port number is 80. It indicates that this is a web application, and the source port is client source port, source IP is client's IP, and here also source IP is client IP. Please make a note that source IP and destination IPs are not changed. The reason is these IP addresses are used to identify the host, whereas the source ports in these two packets are different, indicating different application IDs. Hope this point is clear to all of you, right? So this indicate that there are two different applications are initiating the communication. Both of these requests goes to the same transport layer at the receiver side. Now the transport layer takes the responsibility of multiplexing the packet to the appropriate processes which are running parallelly. There is another machine called host A, also sends a packet with some different port number, source port. Now the another point which you would have noticed by this time is, 26145 is the source port number here, and 26145 is the source port number here. Now there should be a question: how is it possible for two different machines to use the same port number? Please remember, source port number or the destination port numbers have to be unique only within the system. As I mentioned yesterday in an analogy, there is a person with a person with the name Anne, or probably with Raja, may be existing in two different houses. How are they differentiated? By using the house number. Very similar to that, this IP of this machine, okay, the source IP of this machine is A, but the IP of this machine is C. Now A colon 26145, we call it a socket. So A with the combination of 26145 is different from C with the combination of 26145. These two are different socket addresses, all right, and these two indicate different source addresses. This is how the uniqueness of the applications are maintained. So socket is responsible for identifying a particular process uniquely in the internet, whereas your IP addresses help you to identify the machines uniquely in the internet. All right, hope this point is also clear. So the port numbers, in other words, process ID or application ID or application number, this all indicate the same value called process ID. So there is a possibility that two different machines will use the same port number, but the combination of IP and port differentiates altogether. All right. Now let's concentrate on the transport layer protocol. One of the transport layer protocols called UDP, that is User Datagram Protocol. UDP is connectionless, just a repetition, and finer application level control over what data is sent and when. Because it is maintaining its own pace, the application layer will be able to understand when the packet was sent and what kind of data is sent, because it is it is going to be relatively quicker than your TCP. No connection establishment, no connection state. It does not remember who has sent what. All right. And small packet overhead. The header structure of UDP, if I am correct, it is very simple. I think 8 bytes. Okay, let me recall that. I think it's going to be only 8 bytes in size, except the data. So header sizes of UDP is only 8 bytes, whereas TCP, if I remember correctly, it is 20 bytes. Okay, so UDP header is very simple. Hence, the packet header overhead is also reduced. Okay, some popular internet applications which are using the TCP and UDP. We knew this, so I skip it. All right, now we move to something called UDP header structure, right? So this is the first header structure in the transport layer we are going to learn. If you wanted to recall what are all the different header structures we have learned already, yes, we have learned about the HTTP packet format. Then we have learned about DNS packet format, if you remember them correctly. DNS query and the response has the same packet structure. Now, this is the third one, UDP header structure. As I said, the whole length is 32 bits in size. So in that case, it's going to be 4 byte, 4 plus 4, 8 bytes in size. Data size will be varying. So what's the difference between the common template of transport layer header structure and UDP? Source port and destination ports are present. Now you got the length of the datagram as well as the UDP checksum. Here the word is checkpoint, but it is going to be checksum, right? So what is this length all about? The length specifies the length of the data, because UDP header structure is fixed of size 8 bytes. Now, whatever comes after the eighth byte is going to be the data. When it is getting collected at the transport layer, the length field specifies what is the length of this data, which is as the payload for UDP header. This is important for you to reconstruct the data at the UDP receiver side, at the transport layer of the receiver side. Right. So please remember the size. If somebody asks you, draw and explain UDP header structure, quickly draw this small table. Source port, which is of 16 bits in size, destination port 16 bits, length is mentioned in 16 bits in size, and UDP checksum 16 bits in size, and the variable length of data. Right. So we understand what is source port, we understand what is destination port. I also have just said what is length, but UDP checksum needs little more clarity. All right. So what is that UDP checksum all about? So this slide summarizes what is an UDP checksum is all about. All right. So UDP checksum provides for data, I'm sorry, for error detection. So it is very clear that checksum is not for error correction. So take that point into your heart. So this UDP checksum is only for error detection. So it identifies if there is any error. All right. If there is no error, fine. If there is error, how it should respond. So error detection capability is given to UDP checksum. Now, how is it calculated? There is the theory portion. UDP at the sender side, look at this statement. It should give you the clear idea of what it is exactly. UDP at the sender side performs one's complement of the sum of all the 16-bit words in the segment without any overflow encountered during the sum, with any overflow encountered during the sum being wrapped around. The result is put it in this checksum field of the UDP segment. The statement is clear. It says checksum is calculated in this way. Take all the 16-bit words, sum them up, and then if there is any carry, you wrap them around. All right. Then take the final sum, take the ones complement. So this is how checksum is calculated. Anyway, this theory may not help us to understand it clearly. Probably I have taken this input, I opened the notepad to explain to you how the checksum is calculated. So let me increase the font size so that it will be a little more clear. Maybe 20 will do. All right. So this is the first word. Let me say A. This is the second word B. This is the third word C. Okay. You have got three 16 bits words along with you. Now, how do you have the checksum calculated? For that, I take these two and I paste here first. Okay. And then I should sum this up. How should I sum this up? I have to add these two words, okay, binary words together. So I'll add them. So 1 plus 0, it's 1, then 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, and then 1 plus 1, 1, 0. So I put 0 here, then I got 1, then 1, 1, and again another 0 comes, then I add 1 in the previous, then 1, and then 1, then 0 and 1. Hope I have made it clear. 0 plus 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, and then 1 is added here 1, then 1, 1, 1, 1 is 1, 0, so 0 is put 1 here, then 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, and 1. All right. And after that, I should add the next word as well along with this. Very, very simple step. Hope this will not confuse you anyway. A very, very simple thing to see. How are they added? 1 plus 0, 1, then 0, and then 1, 1, 0, and then 1, 1, 0, then 1, 1, 0. No, no, I have made a confusion. 1, 0, 1. So the previous number is 0. Then 1 plus 1, 0. The 1 is taken to the next one. So 1 plus 1, 0, then the 1 is taken 1 plus 1, 0, then the 1 is taken 1 plus 1, 0, then 1, and then you got 1 plus 1, 0, and 1, 1, 1, then 1 is taken and 1, 1, 0 is 0, then triple 1, 1, 1 goes here, then it becomes 0, it becomes 0, then it becomes 1, then 1 plus 1, 1, 0, so 0 is added here, and the 1 will be added with this, so this becomes 1, 0. Is it right? Have I made all the numbers? One, I'll stick with this. Just hold on. So this is going to be 1, 0, 1, 0, 0 is here. Okay, 1 plus 1 is 0. So it goes here, 1 plus 1, 0, 1 plus 1, 0 here, then 1 plus 1, 0 here, and then 1 here. Okay. I missed one here. Okay. Hope now the point is clear. And because the number is wrapped around at the end, this is going to be 1, 0. All right. So this is going to be your final number, your answer, right? But the point it says in the previous slide, if you see, no, sir, don't only do the sum. You have to take the ones complement. So what is ones complement? Ones complement is very simple, as you all are aware. This is going to be the flip of all these bits. So 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1. So this is going to be your ones complement. All right. Interestingly, this is your checksum. Right. So here there might be ones and zero flipped by mistake, but logic is you take the first word, take the second word, sum them up, and then take the third word, sum them up. The result, if you have got any one overflow and any carry comes, you have to wrap it around. So you will get the answer like this. Then you take the ones complement, you get the checksum. Very, very simple calculation, right? So after the checksum, what is done? This checksum is placed in your header. Okay. So the value which you have calculated, that checksum will be available at this place. All right. Now you go to the receiver side. At the receiver side, what happens? Again, the input is going to be same because the same data is sent to the input, and the receiver does the same calculation. He also does the same calculation. You end up in getting this number. Okay. this as the answer. This is not checksum, but at the receiver side, the checksum is calculated this way. Okay, here it will be stopped. What next? These two have to be added. Okay, the checksum is at the receiver side. This calculation is done excluding the checksum value. Please remember, it is not included. It is excluded. The checksum is calculated. So you will stop at this place. Now these two numbers will be added. Okay, if when you add, the result number should be all 16 ones. All right. If all the values are 1, then you can conclude that there is no error, right? But sometimes during the transmission, in case a value comes like this, then it means there is a error present. Hope you can understand why one's complement is taken. Very simple, just to add it, and then if the result is going to be all ones, then there is no error. If there is a small flip, there will be an error. However, checksum has got its own limitation. As you are aware, if this both ones are converted into zero, then there is a possibility that the error may not be detected, but it's only a frontline defense against the error. All right, if there is any error, then the UDP receiver will drop the packet, keep quiet. But on the other hand, TCP, yeah, as you are going to see, once it finds that there is an error, it drops the packet and notifies the sender that there is an error. But UDP doesn't bother, it doesn't care. So this is how checksum is calculated. Very simple logic. Take some 16-bit words, add them up together, take one's complement, that will be the checksum. At the receiver side, do all the calculation till the ones complement calculation, or just before the ones complement, you stop the process, add them together. Okay, if you get all ones, there is no error. If you got one, there is a small deflection, there is a zero in the result, then there will be an error. All right, so this is what I wanted to communicate to you about the UDP. Right, so in a nutshell, we have spoken about the transport layer services and also the UDP header and the checksum calculation of UDP so far. But I promised on the other day that we will work something with the IP addressing as well. So I can request you to go to this portal, but it is not mandatory that you go to the portal now. Um, so what I do, I'll do it for you. I go, I go to this website. Is it working? Yeah, it goes to this website. Right now, I'm going to call probably your name in a random way, and I want you to respond to me. All right, so I'll tell you how this works. I went to subnet ipv4.com is the website where you can do the practicing. This is the problem which is given: 209.161.188.26/26. This is the IP address which is given. The question is, what are all the network address? What is the first host, last host? What's the broadcast address? What is the next subnet? These are all the questions. Okay, you have to fill in, and you can check. You can click this button to check if everything is correct. You will get the answer as correct. Yes. If there is any error, it will say no. So this is a very good page I came across only yesterday for anyone to practice this subnetting. Okay, so let me explain to you only this one, how we are going to calculate. But I request everyone to do the practice by yourself. Now I take this IP 209.161.188.26/26. Okay, so this is the IP which is given to us. Now the question is, whether this is a network address, we do not know. We have to find out whether this is a network address. Whether it's a broadcast address, I don't know. Usable host, I don't know. But we have to calculate it. Okay. How are you going to calculate? You have got the mask as 26. Okay. By looking at the mask as 26, look at this number. It is 209. 209 is supposed to be in class C, right? So because it is class C, by looking at 26, I understand that it has borrowed 2 bits. Okay, it is supposed to be 24, but now the mask is 26, which means it has borrowed 2 bits. Once it has borrowed 2 bits, it indicates that you can create 4 subnets, right? Those who have done good practice can write it straight away like this: 209.161.188.0/26 is the first subnet. Then 209 161.188.64/26 is the second subnet. Then the third one is 161.188.128/26, and the fourth one is 209.161.188.192/26. If any one of you are just blinking in, no, in what's happening here, I appeal to you once again to do the practice by yourself or be in touch with me. I'll help you in learning this. Please don't procrastinate the things. Don't push it. Okay, let me see it. This is not my cup of coffee. Please avoid that and get into the actual topic. So these are the 4 networks which can be created by having 26 as a mask. Now you look at 26. Where is 26? 26 is somewhere in this, okay, because this is ranging from 209, 161, 188 till 209, 161, 188.63/26. Hope you would agree with me. So this is the range of this particular subnet. Okay, so you got 26. Yeah, 26 is somewhere here, 0 is here, 63 is here. So 26 is between 0 and 63. So I can write straight away the network address is 209 161 188.0. Okay, we can check whether it is right. It is right. All right, what is the first host? Once you're able to write the first host, you can write 209 161 188.1. That's going to be the first host, first usable host. It should be right. Okay, then what will be the last host? 209 161 188. Let's look at our calculation. This is the broadcast address 63. Okay, so last host is just before 63. That's going to be 62. We can check that as well. Yeah, answer is right. Then 209 161 188. What is the broadcast address? It is 63. Okay, so I go for 63. I can check. Right. Then it asks for next subnet. What will be the next subnet? This is the first subnet. Okay, what is the next subnet? This is going to be your next subnet. Okay, 209 161 188.64. So 209 161 188.64. That's also right. Okay, so you can even check the whole thing, or you can give the show button. You can see the same answer coming here. Okay, so this is how I would recommend every one of you to please do the practice. It will really help you to be comfortable with IP addressing. We can, how can I go to the next problem? Just click it, it will take you another problem. Still the mask is 26. Okay, we'll take new problem. It maintains in 26. Okay, 18 we haven't worked. Don't worry, we are going to work only with 24 and above. Okay, so I'll take another one. Again 26 comes, 20. Okay, 29 comes. Okay, 29 is a good number. So let's look at how can we solve this 29. Please do not change your uh, 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 concentration. 193.36.41.248/29. This is an interesting number. Okay, what is the meaning of 29? Again, looking at the number, I understand this is a class C IP address, and the mask which is given is 29. That default mask should have been 24. So here it is 29, which means 5 bits are borrowed. Okay, 5 bits are borrowed. So how many networks can you create? 2 power 5, which means 32 networks can be created. Okay, see, I'm probably teaching in a different way. You can take it even as a shortcut. So 5 bits are borrowed by understanding it is 29. 24 should have been default, so 5 bits are borrowed, and I can create 32 networks. So how many hosts can I create? How many hosts per network? It is going to be 256 divided by 32. What is 256? By having a default mask of 24, you will have 256 IP addresses. Okay, so 256 divided by 32. Okay, what will be 256 divided by 32? Is it going to be 8? I think it's 8. Yeah, 8. All right. So what is this 8? 8 is the number of hosts per network. Okay. So 8 is the number of hosts per network. Please remember. So you have to create 32 networks, each of size 8 hosts. Okay. I'm talking something important. So what are those? We can start writing 0 to 7. Okay. So what is 0 to 7? Very simple, sir. I probably write like this: 193.36.41.0 up to 193.36.41.7. All are having mask as 29. So this is the first network. You can easily guess the second network. I have taught you in the earlier class. You have to just add 8 with the last number. Okay, so this is going to be 193.36.41.8 slash 29, and continuing 193.36.41.15 slash 29. Right, so this is how you should sum the things up, right? So I write only the first and the last one. So next is going to be 16 up to some number, then 24. I'm just adding 8, then 32. Okay, somewhere, if you come like this, if you come like this, somewhere you will end up in getting 248, because it's all multiples of 8. So if you divide 248 by 8, you will get 31. Okay, so 248 you will reach. So what I understand from this is 193.36.41.248 slash 29 up to 193.36.41. I have to add 7 with this, that will end with 255 slash 29. So this is what I understand from this calculation. So we can check whether the network address is 248. Let's see, 193.36.41. 248 is the network address. Can we check it up? Yes, it is right. Okay, so network address, once you are clear with the network address, it is now it's the time for you to shift the gear. 193.36.41. First host is 249. That is network address plus 1. Right. What is the broadcast address? 193.36.41.255 is the broadcast address. You can check. So that gives a hint what will be the last usable host address, that is 641.254. Right. So what could be the next subnet? Next subnet will be you have got 248, right? So I think it should be 42.0, but you can check it up. Uh, that's what they may be meaning it. That is 642. I think it should be, but I'm not sure. That's right. So this is going to be the next subnet. All right. So this is the best way, one of the best ways for you to work and practice your subnetting skills. Okay. So any time a network can be given. See, this time the IP address which is given itself is the network address. Okay. But in the previous example, we saw it was the usable host address. So I recommend everyone to spend at least 1 hour for at least 2-3 days to work with, and till you get everything is correct here. Even if you get one no, find it out why there is a mistake, why what has gone wrong, and then you try it again and so on, right? So I recommend everyone to do this. See that you are getting yes here. So I stop sharing, and I also stop the recording.